In a moment that's understandably gone viral, liberal Fox News host Jessica Tarlov brutally humiliated her four MAGA co-hosts, per usual, this time by exposing the egregious double standards they have for Donald Trump compared to the Democrats. It went so bad for her MAGA co-hosts that some reacted with silence and others with desperate heckling to try to change the topic. Check it out.
Okay. Let's say a Democratic president had absolutely no respect for Congress, a co-equal branch, appropriating funds, right to determine tariff policy. You'd be saying, what is this? This isn't what the Constitution wanted. Let's say that a Democrat was deploying the... Yes, you would.
No, I wouldn't.
Then you're a bad constitutionalist.
Oh,
Let's say that a Democrat was deploying the National Guard to cities controlled by Republicans. Let's say that a Democratic president was shaking down private businesses and saying, give me 10% of intel, and maybe I'll make things more favorable for you.
That's not shaking down.
Yes, it is. Let's say that he made you comment.
You're biased to every one of these things, and then you expect us to agree with it. It doesn't work that way.
Exactly what Donald Trump is doing, but in the form of Barack Obama on the 11th anniversary of Tan Suitgate, I might add. Let's say a Democratic president said, I would like to control what goes in our museums. I would like to control American life on campuses.
We could play this dystopian universe forever, but it's now 527.
No, he didn't.
You see, Gutfeld can't address the facts. He can't say, no, here's where it's different. No, here's how I would respond. He's just insisting, well, no, I would be consistent. We have no reason to believe that, as Jessica Tarlov points out, because of Tan Suitgate. We'll get to that in just a second. And it's notable that Gutfeld's three other MAGA co-hosts stayed totally silent. Dana Perino and the other two, Trey Gowdy is one of them, former Republican congressman, stayed silent because they know she's right. They know, given the standard by which they grade Democrats, where any move by a Democratic president is communism, it's socialism, they would absolutely be ready to secede from the Union if a Democratic president, whom they've already referred to as communists and socialists and Marxists, like President Obama, President Biden, demanded a 10% stake in an American company to be given to the federal government. What Donald Trump did with Intel, if you just scratched out Trump's name and slapped Obama on it or Biden, Greg Gutfeld, that would be the end of Gutfeld's coverage for any other political event. As far as he's concerned, that would be the emergence of communism into the body politic. Jess is right to call this out. And again, it says something that the others are so, I don't know if shamed is the right word, but it says something that these people who usually have no problem heckling or pushing back, especially when they outnumber her. They're always outgunned, but they outnumber her. That three of the four stayed silent. And to the extent that Greg Gutfeld spoke, it was just to laugh and deflect and say, oh, you're out of time. It's 5:27. We got to move on. Because they know she's right and they're wrong. The Daily Beast talks about if Fox News host rips colleagues' hypocrisy over Trump, you would be losing your mind. Jessica Tarlov, the lone liberal voice on Fox News' The Five, tried to burst her co-host MAGA bubble by forcing them to imagine what they would say if a Democrat pulled the same stunts as Donald Trump. Tarlov called out her conservative colleagues on The Five, pressing them to admit that they would react very differently if a Democratic president exercised the sweeping powers Trump has wielded in his second term. But there was no moment of eye-opening harmony or compromise from the four, even as Tarlov honored the 11th anniversary of Tan Suitgate. Again, we will get to that, because some of you may have been blissfully unaware of politics at the time of Tan Suitgate. I'm going to open your eyes. A Republican pushed controversy around President Obama's clothing. Trump has purged nearly 10% of the federal workforce, frozen congressionally appropriated funds, deployed the National Guard to 2 U.S. cities, imposed tariffs on dozens of countries, pressured universities and law firms, for brazenly political reasons, I might add, and removed members of independent federal agency boards. He also secured a 10% U.S. government stake in Intel after publicly pressing the company. So, Trump struck a deal with Intel earlier this summer in which the company agreed to let the federal government take a 10% equity stake in exchange for regulatory and financial support. Gutfeld says that's not shaking down, but of course it's bullshit. Amid her back and forth with Gutfeld, she also mentioned that it is the 11th anniversary of Obama stepping into the White House briefing room in a light tan suit to discuss U.S. airstrikes against ISIS. The so-called Tan Suitgate scandal dominated headlines in cable chatter for days, with critics claiming the outfit was unsuitable for the gravity of the talks. And now, we're going to get to Obama in multiple clips, but I suppose, without further ado, we should talk about Tan Suitgate as we know it. This is a refresher, a montage.
The president came out addressing reporters on Thursday, and he was wearing this tan suit.
President Obama's decision to wear a light tan suit at yesterday's news conference. He was wearing a tan suit.
Light tan suit.
I think it was shocking to a lot of people. Is this an effort to make him look warmer?
No way, I think any of us can excuse what the president did yesterday. I mean, and then for him to walk out, I'm not trying to be trivial here, but in a light suit, light tan suit.
Also known as Tangate.
Tan suit, and how the tan suit made him look unpresidential.
Whoever talked him into going into a tan suit, they're so desperate because of these low poll numbers, they're willing to do anything.
The tan suit made him look unpresidential.
Of course, there are pictures of President Reagan there wearing a tan suit. And the compilation, they're bigger The Daily Show has put together so many of them. But Fox just lost its mind that President Obama would dare wear a tan suit. So it is simply a fact. It is a fact. And anyone who denies it is a moron or a liar, objectively. They will always lose the debate. If you're willing to bitch about this, you would absolutely lose your mind. If a Democratic president was publicly pressuring conservative universities and conservative law firms who have represented Republicans and conservatives in the past to bend the knee to him. If a Democratic president demanded a 10% or 5% or 15% equity stake in Apple, in Intel, in John Deere, imagine. So, or Bud Light, Anheuser-Busch, we just know how they would react. We know how they would react. Anyone who suggests otherwise is a liar. And again, it says something that those three of the four knew it enough, had enough self-awareness to go, yeah, let's just keep our mouths shut because, yeah, we would absolutely complain because they're hypocrites. President Obama himself addressed this earlier this year.
Imagine if I had done any of this. Let me just, I just want to be clear about this. Imagine that. Imagine if I had pulled Fox News' credentials from the White House press corps. You're laughing, but no, this is what's happening. Imagine if I'd said to law firms that were representing parties that were upset with policies my administration had initiated, that you will not be allowed into government buildings. We will punish you economically for dissenting from the Affordable Care Act or the Iran deal. We will ferret out students who protest against my policies. It's unimaginable that the same parties that are silent now would have tolerated behavior like that from me or a whole bunch of my predecessors. So, and I say this not on a partisan basis. This has to do with something more precious, which is, who are we as a country and what values do we stand for?
Trump certainly doesn't stand for any, but that's the point. President Obama made an irrefutable point. The same people who enable and cheerlead and celebrate Trump's authoritarian moves now would be justifiably apoplectic if the shoe was on the other foot. And this is one of the many advantages that the right has. Not that the left, not that the Democratic Party doesn't have hypocrisy. I'm not going to pretend it doesn't. It does. And hypocrisy is always repulsive. But the right is animated by hypocrisy. They celebrate their hypocrisy in a way that the left doesn't. Right? The closest that we're seeing is Governor Newsom mocking and imitating Donald Trump and MAGA, basically holding up a mirror to troll them. That's the closest you can come with, well, wait a minute. He's behaving in ways that he is condemned, and he's doing so cheerfully. Yeah, but the point is to show what they have been doing to us. That's it. MAGA is a movement animated by grievance and hypocrisy. And when you point out the double standard, as Jessica did with Gutfeld, while 3 of the 4 are pretty humiliated, and I suspect on some level Gutfeld is too, because he's like, fuck, I can't refute that. What's he do instead? He tries to publicly laugh it off. At least superficially, he tries to persuade his opponent and the audience that it's fun to nudge, nudge, wink, wink, like, yes, of course, we would be flipping on a dime against Obama, but we're not doing it for Trump. And the fact that that bothers you, the fact that that lack of consistency frustrates you, we love it because that's another way to own the libs. Pretty gross stuff. Masterful performance by Jessica Tarlov, humiliating her 4 co-hosts, even if Gutfeld himself did not want to acknowledge it, and she should keep the crusade going. She always does great work. In the meantime, let me know what you think in the comments.